All righty. All righty. Welcome back. Whoa, whoa. Well, that was kind of quick. Usually I have to say that a few times. Thanks for coming back. I know the people in this room right now, you are the hardcore. People that come back, you are the hardcore integrators, or you're the raging alcoholics waiting for the drinks. One of the two. Look, I appreciate everyone sticking around. When we put these kind of events on, we're always looking to, we want you to know what we're up to. That's important. We have this vision. We're spending a lot of time with customers and in trying to have the right product innovation to meet the demands of what you're all faced with. So you can listen to us, but as you saw with Ralph and you're going to see now, it's actually what carries a little bit more weight, I think, in our minds and hopefully with you, is what customers are doing. And I've spent a fair bit of time with all these customers, as Jeremiah have. They have amazing stories. They're being very innovative, particularly in industries that, you might not necessarily feel like they're at the cutting edge. But I think you're going to really take some lessons and really look at what they're doing and be able to put it into practice in your own businesses. So CTO will run the session, but please welcome to the stage Alex from Dentsu, Richard from National Grid, and David from Cambridge and Counties Bank. You don't need this, right?
Thank you very much for sticking out. For my money, this is the marquee session of the day because it is definitely a high audience participation, and it's as much a discussion, a debate, a check-in on how things are going. So, for those of you that aren't aware, each industry we have represented on the panel today is undergoing massive transformation. Dentsu is one of the world's leading creative agencies, advising everyone from BMW to small local houses on managing all of their creative communications. And if there are any industry that is more or less threatened by AI slop in the world than the creative industries, I don't know what it is. So very, very challenging world.
I think there is not any other one.
Well, certainly, at least we heard earlier from Ralph that the AI agent still can't get the words and the colors right on his generated slide, but he was still using generated art. So, we'll see on that. From a National Grid perspective, just the entire shift and move towards a much more dynamic, challenging world from an energy infrastructure perspective. We have the incoming renewables, Drax, for example, with the range from biomass to wind, solar, batteries coming in, incredibly challenging systems that were built and architected and designed by people at the time that thought they were building forever infrastructure in the built world, and it is not forever infrastructure. It's evolving very, very quickly, and that can't be done in a central way as well. So very interesting data challenges as well. And then in banking, I mean, there's a tremendous opportunity for innovation and change from a challenger banking point of view. So I think it is really interesting that each industry represented in the panel is undergoing tremendous transformation and looking to gain competitive advantage or the ability to do better for their constituents in other cases. But I'd like to open it up just sort of at the top there. I can only assume, because people corner me often at these events to say, it's great that you have these leaders up on the panel or you have speakers, but how does that get started? How does leadership participate in transformational change? And I think that's distinctly cultural and local, but I'd love to get your perspective, gentlemen, on leadership and the role of transformational change and how you think about the technical, financial, and social dimensions of actually creating lasting and meaningful change in your organizations. Anybody want to kick us off?
Go on then, I'll kick off. I think you've got to strive to get the balance, like you say. So trying to think through what's going to excite people in the organization to get behind something, right? Because I find quite often you've got a lot of really good ideas coming in, and part of our role is to sift those into what can be delivered, right? What can you actually get into production? What can you make a reality? And then most of our job in there is then to try and inspire people to get behind the good ideas. And the balance of trying to make sure you've got the right investment, trying to make sure you've got the right returns, navigating whatever political situation all of our organizations have, because, you know, there's hierarchies beyond hierarchy on hierarchy in some organizations. Some of them are a bit more agile, etc., but there's still the politics of the organization to play through. And I think our role is to help our colleagues navigate that, and hopefully to inspire them to think that it's achievable, and then to try and break some of the opportunities down into constituent parts where people can actually see delivery, see something happening, and then move on to the next thing. That's probably the hardest when you see some of these bigger transformations.
I think my perspective is that the job is co-designing what that transformation looks like. So very privileged to work for an organisation full of engineers who love to solve problems. That is a blessing and a curse sometimes, in as much as people arrive with a perceived solution. Actually, the combination of business expertise, technical expertise, the experience you have generally gets you to a better outcome. So a lot of what we do at National Grid on the transmission side is about thinking, how are we going to deliver net zero over the next, more work in the next 5-10 years than we've delivered in the last 40 years? Like, that's the scale of the challenge, not just net zero energy sources, a reconfiguration of the network. We need to think radically differently about how we deliver, how you spec engineering solutions, how you enable people to have the time to be engineers. That's a combination of business expertise, digital expertise, good storytelling, focus on value, focus on core IT stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's very similar, but also very different.
Good.
So I guess I don't care about my own success in transformation. It's all about empowering the rest of the leaders so that they can drive that transformation, because I'm going to be humble. I cannot do that myself alone, and I think nobody can. So it's about a lot of education, a lot of empowerment, and making sure that people are co-leading with you those transformation. And very important for me, the biggest ideas are more coming from the ground than from the top. Okay, and there's a tremendous work on trying, I would say, to break the silos everywhere in the organization. So to your point, bringing the teams together, cross-functional teams, generating ideas, making things happen, it's for me the biggest challenge, but where you get the most impactful results, obviously. Not easy, specifically when you are operating cross-cultures, where people have very different approaches, but it's only when the other leaders and the people feel that they can make an impact and be part of that journey that you are moving the needle. That's my...
And you struggle to get people to coalesce around what the right idea is. Because actually when you get competing thoughts on, well, I'd like to go in that direction, or well, I actually think that's the best technology to use, that's when it's difficult to get cohesion in an organization, isn't it?
It is very difficult, and I think we are, I don't know if it's the same for all of you, but we see more and more technology popping from everywhere. You know, the consumer space is really contaminating, in a positive way, I would say, the enterprise world, if I can say it this way. That brings new ideas, new challenges, and I'm personally a big fan of giving a little bit of funds to an idea, let the people try it, test it, and sometimes it comes with tremendous results, and people feel really empowered. You know, you're given your confidence. Maybe there were 10 other ways of doing it, okay, but the time you might have spent selecting the right approach technology, you've already delivered, which is for me a step change.
How do you create that environment, Alex? Because you've told us previously that you almost operate as an internal VC, you have almost a strategic reserve, but in order for that to work, you need to have courage and engagement from across the organization to say, hey, Alex, I'd really like 10K to pursue this idea. How do you create that kind of environment where people have the courage and then accountability to deliver on that?
I think the courage is easy to get when you come with the money. Okay, the accountability might be...
So once people hear your funding stuff, suddenly the courage goes up dramatically?
It's not open bar either, but I guess, as you spotted in the introduction, our industry is under massive disruption. Yep. So I think we shouldn't forget that I've got an ally in the transformation journey, which is basically the burning platform. We need to change things, we need to think differently. And I think we have a very interesting organization because it was built about many acquisitions. We acquired like 183 businesses the last 10 years. Not all integrated, so it's on one side, you've got a chaos, if I can say it this way, but it's also a very good playground for innovation because there's already that culture of innovation in the company. So I'm going to be humble. I have not built that. I'm just exploiting it somehow, but I'm trying to break the barriers so that people can trial, test, and our teams are really here, I would say, to, again, acculturate the people. Like you, we've got a lot of engineers in the company also. So I would say those are both very easy and very difficult people, I would say, to manage when you are running a central technology function. But they have a strong appetite for training, I would say, to test any new kind of technology. So it's just about connecting the dots, basically, and making sure it's happening.
The big word you said there, though, right, is culture, isn't it? Because I think if you look, there's something about creating a culture where colleagues feel empowered to come in with ideas, right? But if you do that, you've then got to help deliver on those, because the first time they have idea, and it doesn't go anywhere, then that stops. And actually that becomes a negative piece in there. And I like, your story about someone was asking for 10K and therefore I'll give that. That's so powerful because people will see that and think, well, I've got an idea and maybe I can go and do that. And that then breeds a culture of innovation. And when you've got that culture of innovation, I think as a leader, it's therefore easier then to inspire and then find the right ones to take forward and take through the big sausage machines of some of these companies.
I think the counterpoint to that is, so we have the same thing, right? So you want to see bottom-up innovation, you want to see people experimenting, you also want to see coalescence around strategic ambitions and go for the big things. Sometimes people doing bottom-up innovation identify the same things at a strategic level that you're going after. I think that is part of the art, being comfortable with some of the chaos that reigns here, tapping into it, getting the right people into the strategic initiatives. That's definitely what we've been trying to do.
We still some challenges because, what we all strive for in chaos is clean data, a level of harmonization, commonality, and those challenges are not vanishing somehow, they are still there. So I think it's very important also, and I think that's part of our conversation today, that it looks very easy, some of the leaders think it's super easy, that AI is available, it's not that expensive. I doubt, by the way. Okay, that's another point. And we can solve all of the problems with AI. And so that was a lot of leadership education that, yes, maybe, but don't forget about the basics, the legacy. We still need to put the house in order. We need, I would say, to even be better than before on the way we are managing data, because we're going to more and more handle the data to the end user, more federate things. So it needs to be more structured, cleaner, more documented. That's a big pressure on my teams who are managing that, by the way. They know it. But I think it's really a prerequisite that many organizations forget before jumping into that next revolution.
But I have a follow-up to that, but I will mention this is meant to be audience participation as well. So if any of this is triggering a follow-up question or something in your minds, go ahead and raise the hand, and we'll get mic runners around the room as well. I do want to follow up on that notion, though, of really empowering the organization through good managed data. And I think, Richard, this is crucial and core to how National Grid is approaching doing more in 10 years than you've done in the last 40. Do you want to talk a little bit about your sort of fabric mesh, your technology strategy and your human strategy around unlocking the value of data for your transformation?
Yeah, so part of an industry that is being pushed to digitalize by the regulator, some very prescriptive guidance on how we should go about doing that in terms of the kind of standard of data that we should have as an organization, how we describe that. So data nerds amongst you, just kind of doubling core metadata standards. It's that kind of territory as a level of detail. So this kind of federated industry only works if you have a common way of talking about things, circuit breakers, transformers, energy. That needs to be universal across the industry. So the NESO is the energy system operator is pushing for kind of a virtual energy system, a spine that connects everybody. Internally within electricity transmission, we have a federated data and digital model. So we have discrete parts of our business, an asset part, a customer connections part, an infrastructure part doing major capital builds, some of which are 5 to 8 years, some of which are longer. Each of those business units has responsibility for its data. It has digital product managers, data product managers. It is responsible for the quality of the data that comes out of it. It must produce data products that are used by the organization. This is an agreement we had with Ofgem. The point is that gives you a common taxonomy across your organization, a common understanding. So when you say circuit breaker, it means these 9 fields from this system. It is described perfectly. That is foundational because that information model is kind of the foundation for how we move forward with AI. So if you start to plug that into your large language models, that becomes context. So it understands what a circuit breaker, a transformer, an overhead line, a tower is. So it's really fascinating and really difficult because obviously the problem with a federated model is you then, as well as everyone coming up with ideas of innovation bottom up, you then have to manage discrete teams, or manage is the wrong word, to work alongside discrete teams who are developing data products, which sometimes intersect, share, duplicate, all of those things. So, but that is the only way you get to delivering what we need to deliver over the next 5 to 10 years, like spreading that work out, allowing people to be empowered to develop and contribute. But it's sometimes chaotic, but we've been doing this model for about 2 years now, and it's started to bed in, and it's starting to pay dividends in terms of data quality, in terms of access to information. But yeah, definitely a challenge to work in that environment.
Yeah, we've got a similar challenge on consistency of data, because a lot of the data we need to be able to do the processes that we do, especially if we're thinking about AI, some of it comes from customer direct, some of it comes from brokers, some of it comes from colleagues, some of it will be from validated third-party sources like Companies House, Experian, etc. And trying to mesh all of those together to get one version, a correct version of the truth, to then go through the process can be quite a challenge. So we're looking at how can we validate the data with third party as much as possible, and then look for, if 3 of the fields match and 1 doesn't, well, the 1 is probably incorrect. Can we go back and check, or do we drive that forward? But that's going to be a big risk for us, I think, as we look to try and automate as much of the, say, onboarding of a new customer, for example, to try and make sure that data is right and is validated. Because if we get things wrong, then it's similar to you know, the regulator gets very interested in things like anti-money laundering and other things like that, where, you know, we've got a legal obligation to do certain things and get certain things right. So that, I think, will have a real big influence on how much we decide to push through genuine full automation and how much we decide to keep that human in the loop. And therefore, what does that do to the return on investment and other things like that? Those are some of the things that we're dealing with at the moment.
Yeah, and I think, so we run assets that have lived on the grid for 40 years, or will live on the grid for 40 years. So our insights come from a combination of humans going out to a site to inspect a thing and capture data about it. They come from an increasing amount of IoT telemetry that's being deployed onto the network to return condition information about our assets, how they're performing. They come from SCADA, which means, for those not in industry, supervisory control and data acquisition, which is the control system. So that is your kind of how your assets are, how you operate your assets. And then there are kind of just general inspections that happen on a frequent basis. So bringing all that information together to make sound judgments about your assets and how you intervene in them. There are opportunities for automation. We will, like humans, are a key part of that, and the data quality of the data we capture is a key part of that. That probably is one of our biggest challenges.
Interesting. I want to dive down. Any follow-up questions from the audience? Yes, here in the center.
This is the question for National Grid, representing SGN right here. It's interesting that you support the federated way of working. Is it because it's a happenstance, or does it actually work? Because I'm trying to do the exact opposite. There are too many data silos that exist, and I want to bring that together to have the governance and standards and things like that, and get out of this, you know, cottage cheese sort of thing that's going on in every corner of the company. How does in National Grid the opposite, the federated structure work, and how do people not step on each other's toes, and how does it work cohesively?
So it's federated in as much as we have business, so we call them delivery vehicles, but delivery vehicles with specific data product teams inside them. I look after platforms centrally, which means that our data fabric platform lives in my world. We have information modeling and governance in there as well. We use a guild structure to bring all of our data product managers together to identify commonality in the products we're developing, approach. So it is, there's an overhead to making that work, I think. The benefit is diversity of opinion, diversity of approach. You can go faster. It can't be fully federated. You still need some kind of centralized governance structure for decision-making, control, quality. But we've done the central thing before. We've had kind of big information management, governance, data delivery teams, centralized data platforms, and there are parts of our business that still do that, and that works for them. It's a bit of a journey. I've been around long enough to see the industry flex in and out of kind of push it out, bring it back, push it. It's like it is a cycle. This allows us to go faster, but it does require more coordination. So when you say IT, do you mean the platform? Sorry, it's just me and her now. That's it.
The beat idea was the point.
Our platform teams run our data fabric. They manage the infrastructure that underpins it. They sort the networking out. We still take core IT services from Group, who provides the kind of the underpinning Azure infrastructure that we use. But my team runs the platform, sorts the plumbing out. Plumbing is a derogatory term, apology. Like, you know what I mean? Network connectivity, my platform manager's in the audience somewhere, so, but yeah.
But I think there's no good or bad model, by the way. You can have a fully centralized model, a federated model, and, but that needs to align to your organization and to how your overall leadership wants to go. If your company wants to keep a very central control, on everything, don't try the federation. Yeah. Definitely, because then you will be, to my point, sitting in the middle, just receiving hits. If it's the opposite and you get a strong buy-in that this is the right thing to do, and again, to your point, the main, I would say, difference here is timing. It's much faster. I would say you can really, demultiply the efforts across the organization, and you can get far more throughput, far more results, to the cost of a little bit less standardization, okay? Again, that's a choice. So it's not good or bad, but my always recommendation is try to align with the way your company wants to operate or the way your company wants to transform. Otherwise, you will be swimming in the opposite direction, and good luck.
You mentioned in this discussion between federation, centralization, and development, I think you talked about a common information model, a taxonomy across all of the different equipment. You also talked, David, about the different pieces of information from external providers, internal providers, from a content perspective. Are you investing locally in building your own ontologies for managing across those different domains? Do you expect that should come externally from a strong third party like a regulator? What I'm seeing much more across our community is leaders are taking accountability for this and building locally the metadata interoperability and ontology, to use a $10 word. But really just the meaning, you said, like, what does a breaker mean in the context of my SCADA layer? What does a breaker mean in the context of my distribution system layer? What does a breaker mean in my transmission layer? Those are very different things, but if you invest in that metadata interoperability, it can mean the same. I'm sure similar situations exist from a content management perspective, from your entire creative supply chain and in the bank as well. But we get these huge benefits if you can cross the domains, but crossing the domains requires normalizing the data across them. How are you dealing with that?
It's difficult, first of all, and I think you are spot on, at least in the overall media and creative supply chain. There is no standard, but you have a bunch of standards. Yeah. A country could decide that to work on that network, you need to respect that taxonomy, etc. So we try to have our own taxonomy, but it's always a combination of several taxonomies with a lot of mapping. It's a lot of work, a lot of mapping exercise, continuously evolving. So I don't have a magic recipe, to be honest. It's only a lot of work. Yeah. But to your first question, I guess, that can this be managed centrally when it's so different? I don't think so. You need to empower, I would say, where the knowledge is, but you need to try to keep that shared taxonomy somehow, where you can have, when it makes sense, a level of alignment, mapping, but it needs to be a strong business, I would say, requirement to make it happen.
I've heard the term folksonomy, where it's folks creating the taxonomy that has to be managed. I don't know if that works either, but it gets back to this federation or governance is required. Whether governance is a distributed governance, centralized governance, you still agree how to work with one another throughout that process across the business and technology. How do you deal with it in the financial world?
Well, it's getting more and more important, isn't it, as well? Because I think everybody's looked for a long time about data quality is really important, and most people have thought about that from a reporting point of view. So I know from our, from the bank's consideration, we do regulatory reporting, and we need to get that right, obviously. And you'd be surprised at how something going through sales into credit and then into operations, the concept of what a liability is can mean different things to different people, and it's fairly standard. So people bring their own personal interpretations into that, which isn't helpful. So we are spending a lot of time at the moment trying to build out those, we probably call them data dictionaries, and that taxonomy of what all these things mean, what they do, how they flow through the system, and get that education to everybody. Because you could probably get away with saying data was something that a team over here ran and managed in the past. You're not going to be able to do that in the future, especially as you look to try and automate more, especially as you look to bring in things like agentic AI. You'll have more users of data in the future than you had in the past, in my view, and I think therefore the work needs to happen now before we go too far down the AI route in that.
Outstanding. Pause for any independent follow-ups. Anyone from the audience? Yeah, we have one over here. I think that's Mark.
Hi. How do you balance innovation with compliance? Because you don't want to block all innovation, but you work in regulated businesses. So what are the best practices?
I think this one is for you. Huh?
Yeah, oh, yeah, thank you.
I know Mark very well.
I feel like I have to say compliance wins, so that's my standard first.
It's on video.
It's very difficult. And again, without sounding like a cliche, I think we need to engage compliance teams really, really early. My view is, and this is a non-technical view, this is more a commercial view, you've got to lead with the customer. You've got to understand the proposition. You've got to understand the customer need. You've got to understand what you're trying to achieve. You then mix that, we were talking earlier on, you then mix that with the strategic direction of your organization to make sure that the plans work. And effectively, your compliance teams are there to help support you achieve the goals you're trying to achieve in a safe way. So as long as you're not trying to do something that is, illegal or going to get you into trouble with the regulator, you should be able to influence those teams to go along the journey with you. It is a huge cost to innovation, but they're there for a reason. So my balance kind of comes in with it's almost a necessary tax to innovation to make sure you're being very cognizant of that compliance piece. The best compliance teams that I've worked with also have a good commercial understanding and aren't just actually that's written down and therefore that's what I'm going to do, can understand the legislation and can try and help you understand how to get through something. So what I don't like is bringing something to compliance and getting told no. What I prefer is, I can't let you do that, but if you did this, then that might work. So they become, I can't remember who said it on the stage earlier on, but that co-design piece with your compliance team is absolutely essential.
I think that's a mindset thing as well. So like no but is the is the phrase you're looking
Yeah.
for. So I think have some game conversations with compliance teams. I think there's a challenge. We take compliance, we layer on internal governance and compliance on top of it. So actually sometimes there's a bit of a conversation and negotiation to be had about what is the actual compliance requirements versus whatever weird thing we've put 5 layers deep on top of it. So I think there's a bit of kind
The
of
interpretation.
yeah. And it changes with kind of teams and attitudes, but I've had some, generally you can reach some kind of pragmatic solution with compliance teams. I think providing a safe space to innovate, secure walled garden territory is vital for some of this stuff. So we work quite hard to provide those environments for our data product people. So it's easy to get access to infrastructure that's secure, that's hived off, that kind of isn't going to bleed into the rest of the network. So, but yeah, compliance ultimately wins, tragically.
I mean, building on that, in my experience, it's also good to sit down with the compliance team from the outset and agree on what the mental model is that we have. To your point, I recall, having a conversation with the compliance team. I asked them, "Is our compliance process because we believe that we have malicious and stupid employees, and we need to protect against the malicious idiots, or do we believe we have creative people that need to be nudged down the happy path to getting stuff right?" And I mean, maybe that sounded like a bad way to start the conversation, but it was a great way to start the conversation, because you think about, are you building a policing approach that you're sort of catching the crimes before they damage the company? Or are you taking a guidance and supporting approach where it's coaching and you can't do it that way, you can do it this way, where it's a collaborative effort to be successful? But if you don't ask up front, what is our compliance mindset? Is it that we believe that employees are going to put the firm at risk every day, or we believe that employees want to innovate and create and they just are ignorant of the things they might run afoul of? I think that matters. And are there insider threats? Are there bad actors? Absolutely. And you have to understand that and be aware of that as well. But at least in my experience, having that base, like what is our mindset about this is helpful, at least in my experience.
I agree. I think that would be lovely. I think the challenge that we face is when you work in an organisation that has multiple styles of delivery going on, fully outsourced deliveries, internally developed deliveries, which is generally true of quite a lot of us. Designing a one-size-fits-all approach to compliance is difficult. So the tendency tends to be to make it towards lowest common denominator, to go towards command and control, present your evidence like it's that. I think that's difficult, and that's some of what I think large organisations generally struggle with this. Like you overcorrect in one direction to introduce more audit and control, and then you spend some time unpicking that to make it easier for smarter people to take stuff through and be unconstrained. But it's a constant push-pull of kind of posture that for us probably depends more on how much we insource, how much we outsource generally.
Any thoughts on compliance, Alex, from your world? I mean, you have all this copyright stuff with models.
Yeah,
I can
but
imagine it's a big deal.
Yeah, but I think I'm very lucky. I've got very agile legal and compliance team who are very commercial savvy, to your point. And I can't remember an instance where we were blocked. They're always supportive. They're getting in the right direction. And again, it's not so highly regulated industries like banking or energy, etc. So it's more about how do you manage your own company's risk, generally speaking, more than external factors, I would say. Slightly different depending on the markets. Some markets have specific regulations, but again, we let them treat with that. But compared to other industries I've been working on, I don't see that as such a big barrier, and I'm lucky, I think.
Audience participation opportunity. Any hands? That was an awesome question. Thank you so much. Did not have that on my cue cards. We have one back here.
Yeah, it's a bit of a follow-up on the compliance question, actually. So Tommy Hayward from Secure Trust Bank, probably a question for you, David. So how have you found in that kind of compliance and kind of your second line journey of having the kind of explainability of the decision-making process of the agentic AI and really being able to kind of articulate what those risks are?
Yep. So I'd probably start by saying we're at the start of this journey rather than at the end of it. Yep. So a little bit like Richard's point about the safe space to try some of this kind of stuff. So we've got a number of proof of concepts on the go at the moment, and we've had compliance and second line in those to see how they're operating. The concept of human in the loop, I think, with agentic AI is really important. So, for example, we've got a good proof of concept on the go at the moment about trying to speed up our asset finance business, okay? Because in AF, it's more about speed back to the broker. We generally take days to get back, and we're looking to try and reduce that to hours. And we believe agentic AI and some of the things we're seeing will get us there. Genuinely transformational in terms of a step change there. So some of the things we're looking to try, we've got in smaller parts of the bank that's fairly ring-fenced, so we can start seeing that. Our view is we will have the human in the loop and the agent effectively saying, we recommend this course of action, rather than the agent taking that course of action for a period of time. And then over time, we'll be looking at that to say, let's say it was in underwriting, for example, how many times has the underwriter disagreed with what the agent has recommended? And at some stage, we'll get to the point where from a credit risk point of view and also from a model risk point of view, we're comfortable saying, it's 90% gets it right. Actually, that's within our cost of risk. Therefore, we'll turn that on. That will be a decision we take probably side by side with compliance. It's not just a commercial decision to take. So I think, it comes back again to that co-design, because the really interesting and exciting thing about this technology is it's emerging. Nobody's got the answers yet. Some people are reading 2 paragraphs ahead of everybody else, but nobody has the answers. And actually, we'll get through it by test and learn in safe environments, but I think that human in the loop piece is going to be really essential for quite some time. Does that answer your question?
I really love what you said at the end there, that anybody who tells you they're an expert at agentic AI is lying to you, because we are all experts at the same, we all this emerged into our world simultaneously, and anyone can get there. But as Dale said earlier, it's you got to get in the game. You got to work on it. You have to develop. I think similarly from a investment innovation point, talk to us a little bit about Dentsu Connect and the work you're doing.
Well, yeah, we are. And that's a good illustration of how do we try, I would say, to orchestrate a little bit complex world. And maybe that opens many other questions. Back to my story, many acquisitions, many different businesses. We never invested to fully harmonize and integrate everything. So we took a different approach, saying now, okay, let's, first of all, because sometimes it's just not possible. Okay. So even when it's possible, then you look at the magnitude of the investment and the time it will take. So we rather took a data approach to build what I call the marketing operating system. So it's like an end-to-end orchestration, I would say, a platform that helps us to abstract the complexity, which is a reality in the marketing world, towards our clients. So for our clients, we get something which is standardized, which has, I would say, end-to-end workflows, and it manages with all of the backends, all of the complexity, and it's pretty powerful, to be honest. So we invested, and we continue to invest a lot on that technology. But what is interesting here is that we obviously did put an effort in building products, 7 digital products, but there's a huge continuous effort on the data layer again. How do we, I would say, source the data from the various systems, all that heterogeneity, and that's still work in progress, to be honest, and is a journey.
And is that like continuous A/B testing on the creative content and refining campaigns, or how does that show up in most?
We've got many. Well, we've got the basic, I would say, more media, I would say, cycle from planning, I would say, to buying, execution. Then we are measuring the performance of media. We are, I would say, now linking that with asset creation, watermarking, doing some live A/B testing on the result on social networks, investing in some AI capabilities to predict, I would say, what will be the best marketing mix. And yes, we see some massive, I would say, improvement in how we can do, I would say, very, very, very targeted marketing more and more. And I think we talk about compliance, and something I didn't mention, I thought it from a regulatory angle, but there's another element where I think we are all now interested, is that we need to develop responsible usage of this technology more and more. I would say, for many reasons. First, to protect the resources of the planet, because people get bored in my industry by receiving tons of emails every day. We need to. So that responsible use, which means the right usage, the right balance, and making sure what we are doing is compliant more from a societal point of view, more than a regulatory point of view, is for me very important. And we do a lot around that. In terms of training our teams, explaining the do's and don'ts, to try to be as good as we can in the overall, I would say, environment and society, but also because we're getting prepared for regulations.
Right.
So there's one in the EU that came, which is super unclear but very tough. There's 1 or 2 in the US emerging. It will pop up every year. So we need to be prepared, and it's more, again, a mindset of our teams who are developing the technology, but also from the wider user community who are consuming the services. And that's an endless subject for me.
So if you have a mindset of having a responsible development of analytics or artificial intelligence, then you can kind of get ahead of data residency or privacy regulation, or the shutdown on the social networks, for example, of blocking, having any of the tracking keys, that kind of thing. You can design it in a better way.
We try to be as flexible as possible because we don't know what the future will be like. We discussed sovereignty yesterday. It's one of my watch-outs, not concerns yet. We don't know. It could happen very quickly. It's very likely in China. It's already there, I would say. What's going to be the EU position in the next months is unclear. The only thing I know is that we need to have the flexibility and the agility to react, because there's no way we're going to interrupt our business operations, and we need to be able to switch things very quickly.
I mean, I guess that then goes into your entire business network. If you have this philosophical approach, and you all have very unique approaches, how do you think about that in terms of your supplier relationships? Does that get into the way you think about, where you invest in collaboration? How you think about, is somebody transactional versus strategic? I mean, all of us are in the product space, and we say, oh, we're partners with our customers, but it seems to me that this now transcends that, doesn't it? Where you're almost creating a shared destiny decision of if you're going to tie with a certain provider or not.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I think it's not a black and white answer here. Sometimes you have no choice. Okay,
Yeah.
If I need, I would say, to leverage social media postings, I have to work with Meta, I have to work with Google. Okay, you've got no choice there. When you have a choice, yes, it becomes now for us a kind of a selection criteria, or at least a screening criteria. It's about getting visibility on your overall supply chain. And I think that's common to all of the industries, to be honest. We try to get more transparency, more understanding, and somehow, for me, it becomes a selection criteria when I can. Yeah.
Gentlemen, I think talk about this as well.
Yeah, I think we'll quickly get to the point, and we're doing this now, where some of our suppliers will be more commodities. So we need you to do A, B, and C, and do A, B, and C really, really well, and that's enough. And then a select few who you need to partner with. And again, back to what we were talking about with the agentic AI and anything in that space, it's so emerging. We need somebody who's willing to come on that journey with us. Nobody can necessarily lead you through that particularly. It's going to have to be something that there's co-investment, there's co-design, that idea that you're doing it actually with a partner becomes far more important than it probably was even just a few years ago. But you don't need every single supplier to be like that, because then you'd never be able to manage it, let's face it. So I think selecting the right ones to go on that journey with is part of our job in getting that right.
Is it similar for you, Richard, or do you find in your heavily regulated procurement environment that you don't have much flexibility there?
So I think it's a mix. I think there is some commodity IT that will always be more transactional, that you're just going to go out and buy, and you want people to do what they say they're going to do. I think agentic is, like the 2 paragraphs ahead thing, is brilliant. I think that's more of a journey. I feel really lucky in as much as I do a thing where I can draw a direct line to the enabling of net zero energy sources and the kind of the connectivity of hyperscaler AI data centers onto the network. I challenge anyone in the AI industry to not want that to happen faster. So therefore, everyone should feel a compelled sense of purpose to help us, to make us do our job better, because that makes the industry move faster. So I think there's always going to be a mix of commodity, and then in this slightly uncharted world, people who you're willing to partner with, who are invested in your mission, who flex more.
Yeah.
But we more and more live what I call the partnership economy, where you see more and more, and a good illustration of that is when you see how all the, I would say, AI dollars are flowing through, with those co-investment between NVIDIA, between the big hyperscalers, and it's like a closed economy. We start to see similar, I would say, funding mechanisms arising across companies where it's a partnership. So some of my vendors are also clients. I've got that very often, that relationship, so that builds very strong relationships, co-investment capabilities, and that's something I think is very powerful also.
Well,
Challenge back to you, Jeremiah, actually, because I think, just because we can, I think your part of the industry is going to have to shift as well when you look at what customers need, because the days of pay us X and we'll deliver you Y people for Z amount of time might not work in the new world. And I think there'll be a lot more sharing of business outcomes and commercial outcomes if you want to be that partner, right? And I think, my experience of what we've done with SnapLogic is exactly that, right? Which is great. But I think you're going to see more and more of that becoming the norm and the expectation from various customers who go, I need somebody who's going to almost share that upside, but also share that risk as we go through.
Yeah, well, building on that, for any of you to kind of close us out here, what can we do better? What can we do better to be a partner? I did not tell them I was going to ask them this question, and I did tell them, feel free to be rude at any point during this the panel. But I mean, in all honesty, what can we do better to be customer obsessed, to be a great partner?
For me, it's care about context. So care about the industry you're working in. Like, we only do what we do because it enables our business to deliver the network. That's it. That's what we're here for. We only exist for that purpose. And be honest, so that kind of, it's really interesting. I've got 1,000 people who will tell me they can do X for Y with absolute certainty in a world where people are just reading two paragraphs ahead. That is scary. So I place a lot of stock in, hey, we can't do that, or hey, we don't know, or hey, like, let's work it out together and we'll figure out a pricing model that works, rather than lying to my face. That's not what you do, but like there are a lot of people who will. You said be controversial.
Don't lie to face.
Yeah. Dick. That's table stakes, right? No lying to the face.
Alex, what can we do better from your perspective?
I think you are doing pretty well, to be honest. You can always be better, but I think I like the relationship we have, which is really, and I told you, knock again on my door many times if you want to trial things, start things, crazy stuff. We love it. So being the first one to test things is something I really personally enjoy, and we can co-develop the products. That's what I do with many of my partners. That's one element, and I guess your new CEO has a very good pitch for me. Just be customer obsessed. I think that's very, very important. Listen to your customers, be humble, and you are, and that's, I think, a very good attitude for me. So continue with the obsession of customers, understanding the context, and do more, I would say, maybe co-development, co-thinking, because this is how we are collectively solving problems.
So extreme ownership and be willing to be dynamic in a business way about outcomes, shared risk, shared outcomes. No is your second favorite answer. And innovate in the open and really be earlier stage in the earlier life cycle of things we're doing about and pressure test it earlier. All right, well, I've got my notes. I hope other people in the SnapLogic team are taking.
Amazing.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate your time.